Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. There's really only one way to describe these media talking heads, specifically in the left-wing media. They're complete nutcases. I mean, there's no other way to say it, and especially at MSNBC. CNN over the last little while has calmed down a little bit. With the new ownership group, you can tell that there's been a little bit of a shift. There's still little nuggets of complete lunacy here and there, but MSNBC, I mean, this is another level of crazy, and you can tell that it's a conscious decision. You could tell that MSNBC has taken on this extremely far-left, young activist base image, and they are going all the way with it, pushing nothing but grievance politics and social Marxism. And for those of us who are just, here being normal human beings living in the real world, you turn on MSNBC and you're just caught there in the moment with your jaw dropping, probably questioning yourself, what am I watching right now and who are these people? And I didn't even know people like this even existed. They're taking crazy to a whole other level, folks, and this most recent little interaction, this most recent political analysis moment between two grievance politics experts at MSNBC has to be one of the cringiest news segments I have ever absorbed. I don't use the word cringe lightly. This, my friends, just like Kamala Harris's entire existence within the vice presidency, is peak cringe. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on here. Let's cover some of the craziness coming out of the left-wing media. In today's segment of The Left-Wing Media Has Completely Lost It, we've got some stuff to talk about, so let's roll the tape. Alright friends, take a look at this right over here from the Blaze Media. MSNBC host and guest say it's white privilege to worry about inflation and gas prices, while blacks are worried about being killed by police officers. An MSNBC host and guest opine that only privileged white people worry about inflation and gas prices, while blacks have to worry about being killed by police officers while going to work every day.
One of the things that you said there that I really think is important is the fact that, inflation, it's almost a privilege to care about inflation as your number one issue. The same is true of gas prices, or even the idea that it's the economy, stupid. I always found that analysis lacking because as a black person, I don't want to get killed on the way to my job. So I'm glad I have a job. I'm glad I make a living wage. But if I can't be alive, then what does that other stuff matter? I mean, speak to the idea that some of this stuff is existential in the minds of the Democratic base in a way that it's maybe not for the middle of the country, the so-called middle, or even more conservative-leaning voters.
Yeah, listen, if you just lost your house because of a flood in Kentucky, if you just lost your livelihood because it burnt down in a wildfire, if you just lost your life because you are the wrong color and you were pulled over somewhere, inflation doesn't really matter to you or to your loved ones. There are much broader things going on right now in this country that affect so many demographics that the dollars to cents case that has been made time and again about, like I said, it's the economy, stupid. There's a blind spot there, and you'll notice that the majority of people who make that statement are generally white. There's a real reckoning going on in America right now.
That, my friends, is expert political analysis. I'm not sure how much I'm going to cut out of the clip in terms of the context, but if I did cut out the earlier portion, the context of the discussion itself was that abortion is going to be the major issue that drives the 2022 midterms, and most likely Republicans are going to get absolutely slammed by Democrats because of this one particular issue. Of course, we've analyzed many times, at least from my perspective, why I think that is definitely not happening. But these geniuses at MSNBC came up with their half-baked analysis that inflation and gas prices are only issues for very privileged white people, and that it's not going to be a driving factor for black people at all. That what black people actually care about is the boogeyman of police violence and I guess abortion or something? In what universe does that make any sense at all? I mean, if you think about it, it's actually incredibly insulting, but just the baseline logic that they're using is, well, it's not logic at all, it's completely illogical. Only privileged white people care about inflation. Well, here's the thing. I am a privileged white person. I mean, obviously gas prices and inflation, and more so just the fiscal lunacy that we've been seeing, is a big factor for me in terms of basic economic and fiscal policy. The whole situation right now is a complete mess, and it's it's probably the number one issue for me. But at the end of the day, the increase in gas prices and grocery prices isn't really doing much to affect my life at all. I'm doing well enough, and I don't have children, to where I could basically take the inflation punch and keep walking. I don't think inflation only matters to privileged white people. In fact, it probably matters less to privileged white people. I know that through personal experience. And honestly, tying race to this at all is just so incredibly demeaning and disgusting. You know, there's privileged Asian people, privileged black people, there's all kinds of privileged people from various different cultures who are doing incredibly well, very successful. But in general, if we're talking about inflation and its effects, it matters most to people who are struggling, to people who are less privileged, regardless of what race they are. Underprivileged white people, Hispanic people, black people, Asian people, once again, the whole list. Those are the people who are getting absolutely hammered right now because of this fiscal insanity from all of these left-wing politicians in the Western world. So really, MSNBC's interpretation of this is the complete opposite. It's not white privilege to worry about inflation. It's white privilege to not have to worry about inflation. Most people in the asset class, most people who are quite privileged, are probably making money off of inflation. It's everybody else, the underprivileged, underserved communities, that are the ones who are suffering the most. And what a ridiculous notion. At one point, this MSNBC journalist says, I can't be thinking about inflation. I'm worried of police officer violence on my way to work. I mean, is that supposed to be taken seriously? Privileged New York liberal woman, probably living in an upper scale community, is worried about being harassed and her life being taken by police officers on her way to work? The whole thing is just a massive grift. And there's absolutely no way that voters aren't seeing through this stuff. I mean, you can tell by the data. These Democrats want to tell you, don't vote based on your standard of living or the economy or inflation or gas prices or failed liberal policies. Vote based on this ridiculous boogeyman that doesn't actually affect your life, that is just open season on you from these terrible, evil, racist, bigoted police officers. There's no way people are still buying this stuff. I mean, just look at the data. Joe Biden's support within the Hispanic and black community continues to crater. Same thing on generic congressional ballot data. These MSNBC analysts are making the prediction that Republicans are going to get absolutely smoked because minorities don't care about the economy or inflation. How incredibly demeaning and insulting, but let's move on from that point entirely. But I really think it's going to be the exact opposite. Republicans are probably going to get elected because they're going to get more than usual support from minorities and independents, at least based on the data that we've covered so far. These people at MSNBC have completely lost their minds, I'm telling you. They're going so far left and so woke, so pseudo-intellectual, academic, out of their mind activist. It's a complete mess. I mean, take a look at this headline. I'm not even going to repeat it, and I'm also going to blur one of the words. This network at this point is irredeemable, indefensible, on another level of grift. But of course, we're not going to make a left-wing mainstream media grift video without including CNN at least a little bit. Even though they have been better than MSNBC these days, CNN is still CNN. And take a look at this story. CNN columnist says he views Trump supporters no different than people who supported bin Laden after 9/11. Regular CNN columnist and MSNBC guest Dean Obeidallah, well, he's an MSNBC guest, so I guess that basically explains the whole thing, has announced that he, quote, literally views Trump supporters as being no different than Al-Qaeda supporters after the terrorist attacks at the World Trade Center. In a tweet on Thursday, Obeidallah wrote, at this point, I literally view people who still support Donald Trump no different than the despicable, vile people who supported bin Laden after 9/11. I mean, this stuff is just out of this world nuts, and my prediction is that there's no way it's going to end well for them. Average people can see through this stuff. I mean, you meet average people, you show them something like this, you say, does this make sense to you? Is this logical? Does this have any place in civilized, normal, fact-based political discussion? And most people, as long as they're not a green-haired, septum ring out of their mind leftist wacko, will probably agree with you and say, that's crazy. Well, the more the media continues to go down this path, the more people are saying those exact words. That's crazy. And thus, the Democrats and the left-wing establishment will continue to shed more and more and more support and more voters as the conservative grassroots base continues to remain strong and expand, and that is currently my view. I think what we are seeing right now is the cultural pendulum beginning to shift in the other direction, and it's frankly a beautiful thing. Oh, and speaking of beautiful things, and the cultural pendulum shift, and people telling themselves, that's crazy, CNN ratings collapse as network looks for, quote, new revenue, including extending the brand in China. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff, folks. And in the end, at least for me, it continues to all be a signal that we are in fact winning the culture war, and it's almost enough to bring a tear to my eye. You gotta love it. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed it, and also subscribe if you feel like it. I'm gonna get back to work. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.